Ever imagine the world hinging on a single adjective? A Soviet linguist, unknown, uncelebrated, found one mistranslated verb, paused, and quietly rewrote fate. No parades, no headlines. Just graphite on paper and a nuclear war that never arrived. Sometimes history's loudest victories are the ones no one heard. If you're drawn to tranquil storytelling, secret corridors, and the power of a perfectly placed word, subscribe, tap the bell, and drift with us into the hush where the world was saved by a pause. A low bell rings in the hush, silver thin, almost shy. It seems to sway somewhere beyond the wall, elsewhere in the city, beyond even memory. I settle into the hush between its pulses, breathing with the rhythm of metal and mist. Tonight I picture a small office in Moscow in 1962. A single bulb trembles over a pine desk polished smooth by elbows, by drafts, by worry. The woman sits alone, shoulders tucked, pencil lifted the width of a heartbeat above paper. Outside, the Neva air is autumn cold and briny. Inside, her tea cools beside a half-finished sentence. Another bell, softer now, drifts through my imagination. I let it fade before words return. Sleep likes pauses, so I offer many. She is 29 or maybe 34. I never decide. Her hair escapes its pin in quiet rebellions. In the hallway, a clock taps like distant rain, every tick another possibility. She reads the English clause again, murmuring it in Russian under her breath. A wrinkle forms between her brows, a hesitation delicate as moth wings. I breathe with her. Inhale, the sentence enters. Exhale, something changes inside it. Sometimes people think history roars, but often it whispers through one cautious breath. A single adjective moves, a verb turns from present to conditional. Ink glides almost soundless. Somewhere far away, missiles remain idle because a phrase no longer implies aggression. We will never know which phrase or which missile. We only feel the absence, like an empty chair in a familiar room. I let that emptiness widen, making space for sleep to wander. Bell again, receding, returning. Its echo is the sound of time forgiving itself. I imagine her walking home later, coat buttoned high, shoes tapping faint Morse on wet pavement. She thinks about bread, about a letter from her sister, about the way translation is half love, half mathematics. She hardly remembers the correction. It felt obvious, almost trivial. Yet somewhere in Nebraska, a farm boy will live to watch 70 more harvests because of her pause. Somewhere in Hokkaido, a girl will learn violin instead of disaster drills. These futures glow like lanterns strung across continents, and she never sees them. I lean back, listening to my own breath as though it were one of those lanterns. The room around me is dim, fabric soft, window ajar for cool night air. A tiny draft lifts the curtain, sets a faint spiral of dust in motion. Dust dances the way embers might if they could forget fire. Another chime, fainter still, almost imaginary. I follow its trail until it dissolves, then rest in the quiet that lingers. Cold War anxiety lived inside everyone then, a shared pulse under every conversation. It lived inside her too, but quietly, like a stray cat sheltering beneath the radiator. She translated speeches, treaties, banal memos about weak quotas. Sometimes she dreamed in two languages at once, sentences braiding, unbraiding. In those dreams, no one fought. Syntax solved everything. At her desk that day she felt the cat stir, the old fear twitching its tail. But when she adjusted the phrase, the cat eased back to sleep. She sipped lukewarm tea, signed her initials, passed the page along. Outside, trucks rumbled, headlines waited, clouds drifted over turbines. History turned, but so gently the hinges never squeaked. I think of hinges while the bell returns, a sigh of bronze on air. Doors opening, doors closing, none of them slamming. Sleep likes open doors. A memory that never happened. Years later she visits a seaside town, carries a small cloth bag, collects smooth stones. She stacks them on the sand, balanced cairns against the tide. She does not know each stone is a life untouched by war, yet her fingers arrange them with instinctive care. The sea breathes in, breathes out just as we do now. My eyelids grow warm, weighted by that slow tide. I taste salt that is only imagined. I let the narrative blur like ink in water. Details soften, edges give way to tone. Her office dissolves, my room dissolves, only the bell remains, distant and rhythmic, a lighthouse heard but unseen. On nights like this I remind myself that small motions matter. A pencil lifted, a hesitation honored, a bell rung. Such smallness makes a cradle for the world. She never told anyone. Maybe she feared seeming foolish, or maybe she simply forgot. Silence can be generous. It leaves room for peace to grow unobserved. So tonight I borrow her silence, wrap it around me like a shawl. The chime fades almost beyond hearing. Between one breath and the next, the metal glimmer might stop altogether, or continue only in the mind. Either way, its rhythm is inside us now, steady, slow, kind. I picture her final gesture before leaving the office. She straightens the papers, aligns the corners, presses her palm flat atop them as though blessing the work. Then the light clicks off and the room keeps its secrets. Darkness does not threaten, it merely rests. The cat beneath the radiator curls tighter, safe from winds that never arrived. Somebody's grandson sleeps in Kansas, lulled by cicadas. Somebody's granddaughter hums scales in a northern practice room. Lives unfold like gentle ribbons, trailing from that unnoticed correction. Bell once more, softer than breath, almost lost in the hush. Each vibration dissolves into the next moment, and the next, until time itself feels drowsy. If sleep has come, let it settle. If it has not, linger with the thought of her pencil hovering, the pause, the careful breath. In that breath you may find room for your own quiet corrections. Tension eased from shoulders, worries nudged a syllable aside, heartbeats translating themselves into slower tempo. I will keep watch with the invisible bell, letting its echoes thin, letting silence widen like dawnless sky. When words return, they will arrive softened, half dreaming, already slipping into hush. Until then, rest in the space she made for us. A space where war stepped back and lullaby stepped forward. Where a single unknown woman touched the sentence and the sentence touched the world. And no one ever knew. A single chime drifts through the hush, thin as mist across a winter pond. Its note sways, lingers, then thins to nothing, leaving a faint tremor in the air. I breathe with that tremor, letting the rise and fall settle my ribs like slow wings folding. I imagine her small apartment, Moscow streets dark outside, the city wrapped in woolen dusk. Inside, a lamp halos her desk, notebooks stacked like quiet promises. Above them, a photograph of her mother keeps watch, sepia eyes steady, unblinking. She rubs her temples, feeling language loosen across synapses half numb from long hours. English on the left margin, Russian on the right, a river of verbs crossing a fragile bridge of intention. Outside, the Cold War hums like distant machinery, constant, unavoidable, yet oddly background, as if fear itself were just another appliance. Another bell, softer, almost hesitant, rings inside this imagining. I let it drift, then fade, leaving space untouched, waiting for sleep to seep in like slow tide. She holds her pencil a moment too long over one clause. A pause, no larger than a breath, yet cavernous with implication. She senses something sharpen, a sliver of misalignment between what is written and what is meant. Some verbs do not merely describe. They beckon missiles, they summon alarms. She will not allow that. She moves one word backward, releases another into conditional mood. Ink shines wet, then dries invisible to everyone but history. No applause, no sirens of gratitude. Just a small exhale, the soft click of graphite returning to desk. I picture the corridor outside her office the following morning. Fluorescent lights buzz, footsteps echo on polished tile. Someone carries a stack of documents freshly stamped, unaware they bear no hidden detonator of syntax. Bell again, distant, blurred by fog, as if the air itself were remembering a lullaby. Its rhythm lengthens, slows, coaxes eyelids downward. Tonight I sit by my own window. The moon is shy, half-veiled, yet bright enough to silver the cup of tea cooling in my hands. Steam curls, then disappears, the same way tense hours evaporated once her correction took root. I think about fates unfolding quietly. A mechanic in Leningrad lives to greet his newborn son. A teacher in rural Virginia never hears the siren that would have emptied her classroom. These unlived catastrophes hang like invisible constellations, guiding no one, yet present all the same. She never links such ripples to that night. Instead, she remembers misplacing her gloves, searching jacket pockets during the tram ride home. She remembers the sweet, yeasty scent from a bakery on Tverskaya Street and buying a poppy seed roll still warm. Her life, modest and mortal, stays within lamplight and ordinary hunger. A breeze visits my room, shifting the curtain like a gentle hand turning a page. I listen to its paper-soft hush, recognizing how translation itself is wind, unseen, carrying meaning from one valley to another. No one thanks the wind for bringing warmth, yet we sleep easier under its work. The bell returns, brushed thinner now, like a fingertip circling glass. I feel my thoughts lengthen into silence, edges softening, syllables dissolving. Some nights she dreams of letters unmoored from words, characters drifting across black water. She rows toward them, gathering each stroke, arranging them gently into new, safer sentences. When she wakes, dawn hovers pale as an unsent telegram. In the years that follow, archives fill with papers she has touched. Footnotes cite initiatives that never escalated. Analysts debate motives, misread tone, attribute restraint to strategy rather than the invisible seamstress behind their discourse. She passes those articles in library stacks, unaware that her shadow lingers over every page. Another bell, slow as twilight across a field. I breathe its distance, feeling eyelids weigh down, thoughts loosen. Words now land softly, like petals after rain. If you listen closely, you might hear the hush between her heartbeats that night. A hush made of graphite and coffee dregs and the dull ache behind her eyes. It is the same hush that settles over our rooms now, erasing the boundary between then and this moment. I picture her hands aging gently, knuckles rounding, veins more visible beneath winter skin. She stitches a button, pours tea for a visiting niece, corrects the child's spelling with a smile. Life unchanged and unremarkable on the surface, yet vast inside, like a bell whose music never fully stops echoing. Sometimes I wonder if chance itself is just another translator, forever rephrasing chaos into survival. A comma shifts, a silence lengthens, and suddenly the planet steadies instead of shatters. We drift on such commas nightly. Bell again, softer than breath, a reminder to let attention loosen, allow sentences to fragment into half-remembered murmurs. The mind need not cling, it may float. As you lie here, feel the body translate wakefulness into rest. Muscles loosen syntax, joints quiet their consonants, breath turns each exhale into a gentle, living ellipsis. Nothing dramatic, only the ordinary grammar of sleep. Her apartment lamp clicks off, leaving a rectangle of darker dark where books stand like witnesses. She pulls a blanket higher, perhaps thinks briefly of the phrase she amended, wonders if she got it entirely right. Then the thought drifts away, like coal smoke thinning into night sky. Let your own concerns thin likewise. Watch them ascend, lighten, disappear. If they linger, give them one more translation. From urgency to mere possibility, from possibility to spacious pause. The bell tolls once more, almost imaginary, as if striking a horizon we cannot see. Its resonance cradles the final moments of waking. Rest here in a room of bells and secrets. Rest in the hush she made without knowing. May each breath find the same gentleness her pencil found that night, and may sleep come the way peace sometimes does, quietly, invisibly certain. A bell calls from somewhere far beyond the drapes, a rounded tone sliding across the night like a slow or through water. Its echo travels, thins, and surrenders to hush. I sit beside a lamp that dims itself by degrees, a timid citadel of light in a room otherwise obedient to darkness. The walls breathe with old remembered heat, the radiator sighs now and then. Not an ache, only the sound of metal recollecting winter. Between each pulse of the bell I let the air lengthen. Let thought loosen its stays, let words arrive only if they step lightly. Tonight I picture her in the Translation Bureau's archive room. Thin dust rising when she opens a drawer too violently for such a late hour. The air is cardamom and glue, stale but comforting. A scent that says, work is being remembered here. She fingers a stack of documents, each page buffed by invisible hours. Ink faintly shines where someone, perhaps herself, once underlined a clause in question. Paper in that era came flecked with specks of birch bark, pale constellations within the grain. She loved that, forest hidden inside treaties. Another distant chime climbs a minor third, then steps back down. Time descending a staircase in wool socks. At her desk, a reading lamp bends like a question mark over the text. She rubs her wrists, cramped from long columns of military jargon. English nouns parade with stiff shoulders. Russian verbs trail long shadows. She searches the parade for misalignments, small stumbles that could topple nations. A single sentence stalls her breathing. On the page it looks innocent. 7 words, no adjectives, nothing fiery. Yet the syntax implies certainty where only hypothesis exists. Certainty, in those days, was the sharpest weapon in any arsenal. I exhale with her, a mirror breath across decades. My tea grows cooler, her tea has already gone cold. We share a quiet disappointment in neglected warmth. Outside her bureau window, street lamps flicker through gusts of snow. Trolley wires hum in frozen tension. The city absorbs its own danger and keeps on coughing exhaust. Inside my room, curtains rest, a candle leans, a moth knots silence to light. The bell returns, subdued as though wrapped in cloth. It pauses sturdily between strikes, encouraging muscles to let go, joints to loosen their opinions, eyelids to weigh down. She considers the sentence again, tilting her head, listening for meaning the way a musician finds pitch. Where the English reads will respond, she hears artillery chambers closing. If she shifts the phrase to may respond, air rushes out. The gun remains unfired. Just one modal verb, a hinge of might versus will, the hinge on which dozens of city lights might stay lit. She lifts her pencil. Graphite scrawls a half circle, then steadies into script. Her breath leaves slowly as though following the arc of the mark. She signs the margin with initials that history will misplace. The page joins a folder, the folder slides into a messenger's satchel, and the satchel departs, unremarked, into corridors of fluorescent breathing. Bell again, lower now, hushed by fog that was not here moments ago. In that fog I see the future she never does. A wedding in Valencia that occurs because no sirens wail. A novelist in Kiev who will write flourishing scenes of peace rather than shelters. The humdrum luster of commuters in Boston grumbling about traffic on a morning that might have burned. None of these visions reach her. Instead, she tidies pencils into perfect alignment, tightens the lid on dried-out ink, touches the birch-flecked paper once more as if to thank it. Then she blows out her lamp, letting dark seal the day like wax over a letter. I listen as silence arrives here, too, lifted on the bell's receding vibration. The chime is now a memory more than a sound. Sometimes memory is the gentlest instrument. Cold War anxiety, that low electrical hum behind every breath of the era, lived in her like a small radio always tuned a fraction off station. But tonight it fades beneath the hush of completed work. She walks home beneath sodium bulbs, boots puffing clouds of powdery snow that fall back across her path. She chooses to think about bread and warm rooms. She does not think about missiles idling in concrete hollows thousands of miles away. I too choose gentler thoughts. A sleeping neighborhood, roofs inhaling moonlight. A cat curled on a blanket that still keeps the shape of a prior embrace. The hush of the bell skipping a beat, returning softer. She reaches her apartment, finds a letter from a friend in Novosibirsk. Plain talk of cinema schedules, of ration lines shortening. Mundane details anchor her to an ordinary shore. She will answer tomorrow, offering equally small news. A borrowed novel, a new wool scarf, the taste of tangerine sold near the metro. Neither of them will mention deterrence or doctrine. The bell tolls once more, the way dusk touches the last corner of a field. I let the note linger, then let it slide beneath eyelids now heavy. Words begin to feather, meaning loosens, narrative drifts like snow blown sideways. If sleep has reached you, follow its quiet tracks deeper. If it lingers at the threshold, stand beside me a moment longer. Feel each breath translate tension into vapor. Translate noise into a more navigable stillness. Remember the way one verb yielded, how history followed suit without celebration. How the planet remained intact for another ordinary dawn. Another chime echoes, scarcely audible, perhaps only imagined now. It leaves a faint shimmer in the mind, the aftertaste of bronze on air. Hold that shimmer loosely, let it fade on its own schedule. Somewhere, the woman dreams of birch forest, snow filtering between trunks like sifted flour, crows sketching brief calligraphy against the white. None of them know they owe the forest its untouched silence to her slight correction. That is all right. Silence is fluent in gratitude. My lamp is nearly out. The room folds itself into darker cloth. Your breath, my breath, her breath across time. They merge into one patient tide. No storms tonight, only that tide. Rest now in the blank margin she left for us. A margin wide enough for whole lives to unfold quietly. Let bells become imagined. Let snow hush every remaining sound. Let peace translate itself into your slow, closing eyes. A bell rings once, low and deliberate, as though someone has struck the horizon itself. The note drifts outward, softening while it travels, leaving behind a hush that feels almost tactile. I breathe into that hush, letting it widen like a slow yawn inside the night. I picture a government dormitory stairwell, concrete chipped, walls painted a fatigued blue. She climbs those stairs after midnight, each step muffled by wool stockings and careful resolve. Inside her coat pocket, a folded carbon copy of the draft she just amended. Nothing heavy, yet the paper seems to carry the density of planets. Another bell, gentler, tilts through the fog of memory. Its echo feels round, moth-winged, intended purely for drowsy listeners. Between chimes, silence stands like a trusted sentinel. In her tiny flat, 2 rooms and a corridor, she sets the draft beside a wilted geranium. The plant leans toward a window bleached by street lamp glare, too dim for photosynthesis, bright enough for hope. She loosens her scarf, exhales the chill, and rubs the pad of her thumb where graphite has left a shadow. Tonight, the wind rattles tram cables outside, restless but distant. Inside, kettle water warms with gradual conviction, issuing small sounds of anticipation. Steam rises, curls, then vanishes. She watches like someone memorizing a fading constellation. The sentence she altered repeats in her head, even as she tries to focus on the teapot. One auxiliary verb removed, one possibility introduced. Will became could. Thunder became weather, nothing more. I sip my own tea too, here in a room decades and continents away. The cup presses a modest circle of warmth into my palms. Every swallow is an invitation to slower thinking. A soft bell again, briefer this time, the metallic equivalent of eyelids drooping. Sound withdraws, leaving the air padded and safe. She imagines the men who will read her revision tomorrow. They will skim, initial, staple, and send it on. Perhaps one will frown, sensing an unnamed gentleness now woven into the statement. Perhaps none will notice at all. Outside her kitchen window, snow falls sideways, numerous but unhurried. Flakes catch the street lamp glow, turning the air into slow-moving lanterns. She taps the glass softly as though testing the thinness of realities. I pause my own voice, letting quiet accumulate like fresh snowfall across the transcript of your mind. The pause lengthens, then settles. When she finally sits at her small table, bread and jam await her. She spreads the jam carefully, not minding that the crust is stale. There is a tenderness in ordinary gestures performed after necessary courage. Cold War tension hums somewhere below street level, beneath pipes, cables, and human chatter. In her flat, it is only the low resonance of the building's boiler, predictable and containable. She chooses to match her breathing to that hum, steady, mechanical, forgiving. The bell re-enters as though reassured that we are still listening. Its tone has softened, like velvet rubbing against velvet. Even the echo seems to rest before completing itself. She takes out a small notebook, its cover frayed at the corners. Inside, between grocery sums and half-remembered poems, she copies the corrected clause in neat cursive Russian. Below it, she writes the English original, a mirror reflecting a slightly different mood. I wonder if those 2 lines ever fluttered in her mind the way pages of a bilingual dictionary do when a train passes. Possibility shaking against certainty, then folding itself back into stillness. Pages always return to closedness. Hearts require longer. A sigh escapes her, not regret, just relinquishment. She cannot foresee anniversaries left intact, childhoods uninterrupted, skylines not reduced to equations of fallout. She can only trust the pliability of one sentence. Snow accumulates on the outer sill. She traces a fingertip through the frost, leaving a small curved line, an accent mark for winter. Then she turns off the kitchen bulb, allowing darkness to revise the room into quiet shapes. The bell now hovers at the edge of audibility, like breath against a shell held to the ear. Each vibration is slower than the last, teaching nerves how to unclench. She moves to her bed, quilt patched from scraps of old uniforms and factory remnants. Lying down, she listens to the radiator tick itself cooler. In the tick-tock spaces, her mind replays the moment of the pencil's pause, the decisive gentleness of letting a future breathe. We follow her into near sleep, where thoughts stagger, then blur. Her last waking image might be a corridor of filing cabinets, each drawer closing itself softly, satisfied. Or perhaps it is simply the geranium, tilting obediently toward a faint promise of light. I listen for our shared bell one final time. Its note is barely present now, just a shimmering memory of metal. Silence opens like a corridor without walls. Let your breath find that corridor. Allow verbs of urgency to shift into modality. Must into might, should into could, will into may. Language itself loosens the muscles. If stray worries surface, imagine them printed on thin carbon copies fading with each duplication. Soon the ink will ghost away, leaving only pale outlines nobody can decipher. You are free to misplace those papers in the dark. The bell has ceased, replaced by the idea of a bell. That idea is enough to keep watch while you wander inward. In another room, another decade, she finally sleeps, pencil still on the table, graphite tip dulled from heroics nobody will celebrate. The geranium shares the dark with her, leaves lifted like small, green flags of truce. Peace is rarely louder than this. It is the softness of modal verbs, the thin scratch of graphite, the distance between chimes. So let the distance lengthen, let the sentence drift beyond recognition. Let sleep hold you the way language held the world tonight. Good night, and may every could you encounter be wide enough for calm. A bell drifts through the early dark, one rounded tone inhaled by fog, then slowly released. I lean into its decay until only silence remains, thick enough to rest my thoughts upon. I place her in the records office at dawn, hours before the city fully wakes. Frost maps itself across the inside of the window, tiny continents blooming and vanishing with each warming breath. She has arrived too early for anyone to notice, boots still damp from half-melted snow on the tram floor. The corridor lights flicker, deciding whether to commit to brightness. Their indecision feels human. Another chime slides in, quieter, as if distance had clothed it in wool. Between bells, the hush is spacious, waiting, patient. She removes her gloves, flexes fingers stiff from cold and anticipation. The folder before her carries an innocuous stamp, routine linguistic review, yet she knows the stakes are never routine. One paragraph bears the faint imprint of hurried translation, English smoothed into Russian without enough breath between clauses. A small ripple of alarm runs through her. The sentence promises retaliation where only dialogue had been intended. She sits, spine straight, and sips yesterday's tea reheated on a small coil burner. The liquid tastes like nickel and memory, but it warms the path to her lungs. Snow dust drifts from her hair and melts on the pale paper, leaving translucent moons along the margins. Each drop reminds her, fragility sometimes edits more thoroughly than ink. The bell returns, softer still, barely a presence, more suggestion than sound. Its echo lengthens, smoothing rough thoughts like a hand over rumpled cloth. She draws her pencil, pauses. The graphite tip hovers, absorbing hesitation. She closes her eyes and recites the English phrase under her breath. We will act without further warning. A pulse taps at her temple, synced to the fluorescent hum. She tastes the words again in Russian, hears how they strike the ear like steel on stone. Breath slows, winter's chill crawls gently out of her collar. A memory rises, Her mother sewing a tear in a school blouse, needle dipping, thread pulling, a small correction rescuing an entire garment. One stitch at a time, quiet salvation. She opens her eyes. With the same delicacy she shifts the modal. We may act pending further dialogue. Graphite schemes the surface. The new clause lies still, translucent, almost shy. Like fresh snow, it absorbs the noise of possible futures. Outside the window, dawn loosens a faint rose along the horizon. No trumpets, no announcement, just the slow widening of color. Inside, heat pipes knock politely, reminding her to stand and stretch. She walks to the filing cabinets, each drawer a lung holding history in and letting it out on cue. The bell tolls again, fragile as dew, at the edge of vanishing. Its diminishing arc gathers my thoughts, tucking them beneath a quilt of calm. She imagines the document's path, from her hands to a diplomat's briefcase, from the briefcase to a conference table polished to unnatural glare. Generals will scan the clause, searching for hostility, find only room for breath. Perhaps they will not notice the space she carved out, but their shoulders may relax without knowing why. She slides the finished page into its folder and smooths the crease with her palm. The gesture feels ceremonial, though no one witnesses, though no one applauds. She presses her fingertips to the thin cardboard, a silent blessing. I let silence widen here as well. It pulls between sentences, inviting muscles to unclench, eyelids to lower by degrees. In that pause I sense lives diverging. A dockworker in Odessa who will cradle his newborn son tonight, unaware his future stayed intact before sunrise. A nurse in Montreal who will sip coffee on break, joking about weather rather than fallout drills. They belong to the margin she just created. Snowflakes tap the window pane like muted typewriter keys. Each flake writes a softer version of the morning. She wraps her scarf again, gathering warmth for the walk home. Across her desk, the faint scent of graphite lingers, pairing with steam from the coil burner now cooling, a duet of used energy. The bell returns once more, almost indistinct, so gentle it might be internal, a rib resonating. Its vibration stretches, turns transparent, and rests. She steps into the corridor. Lights now fully commit to their glow, turning linoleum into a pale river beneath her boots. Elevator doors sigh open, releasing stale perfume and yesterday's gossip. No one shares the lift. She descends alone, listening to cables sing their low metallic lullaby. Out on the street, tram tracks shine under fresh snow, reflecting a sky still deciding on color. She joins a small line at the kiosk, buys a sweet roll heavy with cinnamon, pockets it for later. Powdered sugar flecks her gloves, stars on midnight wool. She thinks of nothing but the warmth seeping through paper, an ordinary miracle. I follow her home only in imagination, refusing to intrude further. Instead, I return to this room, to the still cup on my table, to a curtain barely stirring. The bell has ceased, leaving its shape in the quiet. Silence practices its own slow breathing through us. If rest has not yet found you, borrow her morning. The frost, the small correction, the cinnamon warmth. Picture the single verb she moved like a chess piece, clearing the board of catastrophe. Let your mind lift that tiny word, roll it between thought fingers, feel how light it is, how potent. Exhale what you no longer need. Inhale what remains, snow light, soft bells, graphite gray. The world outside this breath waits in peace because someone paused long enough to listen for nuance. Another bell may come or it may not. Either way, its echo lives on inside the hush we share now, margins stretched wide for unspoken dawn. Close your eyes where language has softened, and step gently into the quiet she earned for us, note by fading note. The first bell drifts across the room like a feather caught in a single beam of light, rounding the air before settling into hush. I feel it touch the inside of my ribs, a reminder that silence has a pulse. I imagine her underground this time, 2 floors below the Kremlin gardens, where the archive vaults smell of cardboard and iron oxide. The corridor bulbs glow orange, the color of cautious dawn, though it is night on every clock that matters. Her footsteps hush against waxed concrete, a slow metronome guiding brittle files back to rest. A second chime glides in, fainter, as though the bell had stepped behind a curtain of falling snow. Between the tone and its echo, breath lengthens, thoughts loosen, cuffs of tension unclasp. She reaches a door reinforced with riveted steel, turns a key no larger than a piano's black note. Inside, shelves stacked to the ceiling, pages sleeping in gray blue folders, each spine stamped in serum ink. Fluorescents flicker overhead, steady enough for work but soft enough for reverie. She exhales a plume the vault's chill cannot help but embrace. On a central table waits the transcript. 47 pages, English on the left, Russian on the right, the Cold War balanced like a seesaw. She brings her tea, black, unsweetened, to keep the night from claiming too much of her warmth. Steam rises, dissolving just beneath the low lights, a modest aurora. Bell again, slower now, resonance brushed with velvet. Silence returns thicker, a snowfall nobody needs to shovel. She slides her chair closer, schemes paragraphs practiced as rosary beads. Most passages behave. No threats disguised as syntax, no promises sharpened into ultimatum. Then she finds it, a single declarative sentence claiming readiness to unleash decisive force. In English it is stern but conditional. In Russian, the translator has granted it certainty. A verb has lost its tail of possibility. She rests her pencil on the margin, listening to pipes grown somewhere in the walls, as if the building itself weighed outcomes. Even here, anxiety hums like the low register of an organ held too long. She lets the hum pass through, neither resisting nor amplifying it. Another bell, almost shy, peals from the fog of my imagination. Its echo folds into itself, teaching every muscle the shape of release. She closes her eyes, recalls a summer on Lake Onega when language meant nothing more than ripples learning the shore. Back then, verbs had no payloads. They just described weather, rowing, laughter. Memory tastes of pine resin and rye crust. She allows it to linger, then returns to the page calmer. Graphite meets paper. She swaps will for might, writes a note that the adjustment preserves original intent. Her handwriting curves like drifting snowflakes, distinct yet prone to melt into anonymity. She signs her initials, small and unassuming, then draws a tiny breathing mark, a private habit as if letting the text inhale. The bell releases another note, longer in decay, its outline blurring as though distance were a blanket. Sound thins, the mind drifts. She pictures those who will never know. A boy in Reykjavik who will grow into a poet of ordinary mornings. A fisherman in Vladivostok whose nets will haul only mackerel, not fallout. A librarian in Buenos Aires who will shelve future histories that mention tense negotiations but omit calamity. All of them folded into the space her pencil just granted. She does not allow herself pride. She calls it accuracy, nothing more. Accuracy, she believes, is the gentlest kind of mercy. I pause here, let the thoughts settle, like snowflakes choosing their final perch on an old wooden fence. Silence broadens, smoothing every crease in the present. She gathers the pages, taps them into order, slips them into a canvas envelope. Her gloves wait on the chair back. She draws them on, finger by finger, sealing warmth around the small bones of her hands. One glove still smells faintly of cedar from a drawer sachet, another layer of quiet defense. The vault door closes behind her with a sigh dense as midnight wool. As she walks the corridor, each bulb hum merges into a single sleepy chord. Elevator cables breathe, gears yawn. Above, the city keeps its secrets beneath blankets of snow and secrecy. Yet another bell, nearly silent, resonates within rather than without. Its diffusion feels like mist inside the lungs, persuading neurons into slower circuits. She steps outside, greeted by a snowfield lit silver under distant street lamps. Taxis idle in muffled queues. Breath from their exhaust twirls like slow dancers, unhurried, harmless. She pulls her collar up, listens to snow hush the city's rough edges, feels herself carried by rhythm measured in snowfall and heartbeat. At a corner kiosk she buys nothing, only stands beneath its awning to watch flakes swirl under the light. A tiny pleasure, but real, the way time seems to pause mid-sentence, letting the next clause decide itself gently. I stay with that pause, inviting you to rest inside it. Feel your shoulders slide one vertebra lower, your jaw unclench, your eyelids perform the first rehearsal of closing. The bell need not return. its memory is enough to keep cadence. She turns toward home, courtyard gates creaking open, stairwell echoing softly. Somewhere above, a neighbor plays a waltz on a radio turned low, 3 beats rocking weary bones. She climbs each step as if aligning syllables, quiet, deliberate, kind. In her flat, the radiator ticks approval. She sets the envelope on the desk, presses a fingertip to its canvas, muttering a wordless benediction. Then kettle, socks, and finally bed, linen cool but quick to learn her shape. The snow continues, impartial, laying gentle weight on roofs, on ambitions, on fears. Street by street, the world quiets, entire continents folded into the soft grammar of possibility. Her correction travels unseen, like warmth through pipes, like bells through fog. Let us end here in the hush that remains. If sleep is near, invite it with the image of snow settling on sealed archives. If wakefulness lingers, breathe alongside the memory of that bell. The way its final echo never fully stops, merely dissolves into the larger silence that cradles everything we hope to keep safe. A bell sounds, low and rounded, then drifts away like breath against a cold window. Silence follows, settling on the furniture, on the turning of thoughts, on the slope of the night. I picture her tonight in an almost empty streetcar, wooden seats polished by decades of coats and caution. The car glides through Moscow dusk, wheels humming a faint lullaby beneath frost-veiled glass. Streetlights elongate across the pane, blurred amber commas punctuating her reflection. She holds a thin briefcase on her lap, brown leather softened at the hinges, inside the page she altered only hours ago. Another distant chime rises, softer than the last, slipping between vibrations of rail and winter air. The echo widens, inviting lungs to draw slower, inviting thoughts to fold. She reviews the sentence in memory the way a pianist traces a remembered chord. Force will be met with equal force. 14 letters of certainty, too rigid, too loud. Her pencil had entered like dawn meeting window frost, gently recasting it. Force may be met with measured response. Weight redistributed, thunder replaced by conditional snow. The car rattles on. At each intersection, figures wait in overcoats, faces half hidden in scarf and patience. None know that destiny just slid quietly into a softer key. Another bell glimmers at the edge of hearing. Its resonance lingers like light that has forgotten its source. Between tones, emptiness fills with slower pulse, a lull for city and self alike. She disembarks near a canal glazed with thin ice. Water beneath chuckles softly where current keeps small holes open, breathing spots for silent clouds. Bridges arch overhead, stone ribs lit by sodium glow. They look like pages half turned in an enormous book. She stops to watch flakes gather on the railing, each crystal an asterisk of unspoken footnotes. Somewhere inside her coat, the briefcase warms to her side, leather claiming the temperature of resolve. I let this image linger, a lone figure beside dark water, snow claiming even sound itself. Sleep-like spaces unhurried by narrative, so I hold the moment open, letting quiet deepen. Cold War anxiety hums in distant watchtowers and coded cables, in red phones waiting beside drafts of threat and counter-threat. Yet here, among streetlights and drifting snow, the hum fades, replaced by the soft percussion of footsteps on packed ice. She walks, and each step is a syllable translating fear into mere weather. A bell again nearly swallowed by hush. Its tone evaporates, leaving a warmth where sound once lived. She reaches her building, stucco walls, chipped paint, a brass handle cold enough to sharpen attention. Inside, the stairwell smells of coal dust and boiled potatoes, an aroma of perseverance. Up 3 flights, each landing holds a single bulb flickering like a tired lighthouse. When she reaches her door, she pauses. A neighbor's radio plays faint dance music from decades prior, the melody slowed by static. In her flat, radiator pipes tick like distant metronomes. She removes her boots, sets the briefcase on a table lacquered with quiet history. The room is simple, a bookshelf bending gently under volumes of Pushkin and Hemingway, a kettle waiting on a single electric ring, curtains woven from hand-me-down linen. She opens a window just enough to sip the cold. Snowflakes drift in, dissolve before touching the worn parquet. She closes her eyes, hears them vanish, a miniature applause for the uncelebrated. Another chime, barely there, resonates like a memory rather than a fact. The mind tilts toward rest, words drifting slower, vowels elongating. She places the amended document in an envelope, addresses it to an office whose clerks will never know her name. Wax seal pressed, she sets it aside for morning delivery. Pencil still in her hand, she draws a small circle on scrap paper, her private symbol for possibility fulfilled. Then she writes a single line of verse. Snow translates the city into one language. The line pleases her. She smiles, faint as dawn behind clouds. Over kettle steam, she thinks of places spared by her paws. A silent bay in Maine where gulls will cry at sunrise. A hillside vineyard in Georgia where grapes will fatten evenly. A classroom in Berlin where children will giggle over chalk dust. All of it floats across her imagination like lanterns set free above a river. A final bell glides through, thread-like, shimmering once before merging with dark. Its absence is a blanket, thick, forgiving. She sips tea, tastes bergamot and iron. The cup warms her palms, lines of fatigue loosening at wrists and shoulders. She moves to the window again, watching snow thicken rooftops, softening angles into harmless curves. Her breath fogs the pain. She traces a small arc, completing the earlier circle. I match her breath here, letting my own exhale lengthen. You may follow if you wish, letting air leave gently, letting chest and eyelids weigh. Notice how thought narrows to a quiet lumen, just enough to guide you toward rest. She turns off the lamp. Room becomes silhouette, furniture reduced to patient outlines. The bed greets her with starched sheets, faint scent of lavender from last summer's garden visit. Under blankets, she lies listening to the city hush itself street by street. Pipes murmur, snow deepens, and somewhere in a governmental archive a sentence rests lighter than before. If sleep meets you now, let it. If wakefulness lingers, picture streetlights stretching amber commas across a frost-dimmed window, pauses between possibilities. Let each breath be a soft revision from must to might, from tension to tender grammar. The bell will not return this hour. Its echo lives on inside your slow heartbeat, inside mine, inside hers. May that echo keep us company until morning turns the snow to pearl and the world begins again, quieter for her correction, quieter for our shared hush. A single bell rings as if drawn up from the ocean floor, its note round, slow, dissolving into the early night hush. I feel the echo hover, then glide away, leaving the air smoother than before. I imagine her tonight seated in a shortwave monitoring room, basement level, beneath a roof that gathers snow like quiet applause. Dials and gauges glow pale green, their soft light painting her face with tidal shadows. Behind thick glass a bank of reel-to-reel recorders turns, magnetic ribbon whispering the secret geometry of speech. The only scent is warm circuitry mixed with faint cologne from a prior shift, a human trace folded into wires. Another bell drifts through, fainter, gentle, polite. Between the strike and its fading tail, my breathing lengthens and perhaps yours does too. She adjusts the headset, the cup of each earpiece cold against skin. Over the static she hears voices in English, clipped, urgent, yet incomplete, an exchange captured halfway between continents. On her notepad a column of shorthand dashes and loops grows like reeds along a riverbank. Every mark waits to be translated, to be coaxed into calmer water. Tonight the transmission carries a crucial fragment, a phrase about imminent deployment. In English the speaker's tone is calculation wrapped in fatigue. Through machine transcription the word deployment arrives in Russian as strike. One vowel off, yet heavy as iron. The bell returns, its resonance now thinner, dressed in wool, the way light dims under snowfall. Silence follows, widening the corridors of thought. She loosens the headset, rubs the bridge of her nose. How often meaning slips when traveling at the speed of fear. She leans closer to the console, rewinds the tape a fraction, listens again. This time she hears a subtle qualifier, pending review, lost beneath the hiss. Deployment pending review is a promise of delay, a door not yet shut. Graphite touches paper. She scratches a small caret, adds 2 Cyrillic syllables. Possible. Strike becomes maybe. A soft sigh leaves her. The room seems to echo it back through ventilator hum. Outside, January wind noses along the foundation, testing for weakness but finding only stone. Another bell, quieter still, trembles across the mind's horizon. Its decay glistens, turning sound into something you could almost cup in your hands. Cold War anxiety lives here in cables that run under rivers, in antennas that comb the upper air like fretful fingers. She feels it too, an undercurrent of static in the blood, but tonight the feeling softens like cloth steeped too long in sunlight. A memory surfaces, summer at her grandmother's dacha, tuning a battered radio that warbled between stations. They laughed whenever foreign music bled through. A saxophone one moment, tinny pop the next. She learned then that frequencies overlap, but meanings can be teased apart with patience. Patience serves her now. She retypes the intercept, ensuring possible deployment stands clear of certain strike. The carriage return on the typewriter lands with a soft, decisive click. Small thunder return to whisper. The bell flickers again, a pulse more imagined than heard. Its afterglow drapes the room, coaxing shoulders to relax, eyelids to weigh. She files the corrected transcript into a pneumatic tube canister, inserts it and presses the brass lever. Air sucks the cylinder away, a silver seed whisked toward officials who will read it before dawn. She watches the tube's mouth a moment longer, listening to absence fill with accomplishment. I pause here, letting quiet thicken, allowing any tightness in spine or jaw to settle into the chair of night. She pours lukewarm coffee into a chipped enamel mug, but sets it down untasted. Instead, she opens a small notebook, one she keeps hidden beneath technical manuals. On the first empty page she writes a brief line. Tonight the sky retuned itself. Ink pools then dries matte. She closes the book. The secret feels lighter, shared only with paper. Another bell wafts by, so distant it seems more memory than metal. Its fading tail feathers through consciousness, smoothing the edges of wakefulness. She thinks of strangers spared by the recalibrated phrase. An elderly couple in Warsaw who will wake to the smell of rye bread. A student in Toronto who will oversleep her mathematics exam. A beekeeper in rural China who will note the first stir of hives come spring. All these lives buzz softly in her mind, as if the radio had chosen a sweeter station. She smiles, small, private, returns the headset to its hook. Machines continue their endless listening, but her shift nears its close. She logs the hour, signs with initials neat as moth wings, and flicks off the console's amber toggles one by one. The bell's presence is now only an idea, a shimmer tucked behind silence. Outside, snow carts itself across empty streets, piling at the edges like folded letters. In the coat room, she wraps a scarf around her throat, knotting it loosely, a gesture half habit, half gratitude. With mittened hands she pushes the door, stepping into a night wide enough to hold all that nearly happened. Snowflakes touch her lashes. In each flake she senses the hush of potential unspent. Street lamps pool amber circles on the white, punctuation where no further sentence is required. I breathe alongside her steps, offering you the same cadence. Slow, easy, unurgent. If thoughts crowd, picture those lamps receding behind her, each light a bell gone to rest, each shadow a safe margin. She rounds a corner, disappears into the softness of snowfall. The monitoring room hum persists without her, but the tape she corrected rewinds forever inside the world's unwritten calamities. Let that hum recede. Let the bell's ghost keep watch. Release the headset of worry, place it on the hook of now. Feel the sky above your closed eyes retune itself to calmer frequencies. Sleep, when it comes, will arrive like snow on circuitry, silent, thorough, transforming the ordinary into mercy. A single bell glides through the room, low and rounded, then withdraws as though pulled back by an unseen tide. Its leaving leaves a hush vast enough to map constellations upon. I picture her tonight in a map-making office borrowed after hours, drafting tables scattered with blue-tinted charts of coastlines and currents. The air smells of graphite dust, salty adhesive, and the faint perfume of ink intended for oceans rather than treaties. Fluorescent lamps hover like small moons above her shoulders, drawing pale halos on linen paper. A second chime arises, softer, gentler, as if shaken loose from mist. Between the tone and its echo, breath slows, thoughts loosen their knots. She is here because cartographers too need translators. A newly declassified communiqué about Arctic shipping lanes has arrived from Washington, phrased in English legalese dense enough to sink a trawler. In Russian, an early draft has rendered a clause navigation will be secured by any means, a phrase that could invite icebreakers, or warships. One word, any, has drifted too far from shore. She brushes eraser crumbs from the map of Laptev Sea, then turns to the document, eyes adjusting from coastlines to commas. Outside the high windows, the city is only silhouette, roofs, smokestacks, and a winter moon flattened by haze. Inside, pipes hum like distant buoys, their rhythm matches her pulse. Another bell drifts by, thinner now, its resonance settling like snow on the long tables. Silence pours itself into corners, into sleeve cuffs, into the hollow of the breath. She reads the English again, tasting each word in the mind's mouth. Navigation shall be ensured by appropriate means. Appropriate. A single adjective of restraint. She writes its Russian twin, letting the consonants breathe. Graphite glides, soft, decisive. The sea on the chart seems to exhale, waves smoothing. She pauses, lifts her pencil, gazes at a compass rose sketched on the nearest sheet. The compass reminds her that directions are merely choices named. North, south, peace, peril. Each begins as a point, then as a path. Cold War anxiety still roams the corridors above like a restless patrol. Yet down here, among charts and quiet bells, it feels reduced, a storm sighted far beyond the horizon line. She lets that distance settle into her shoulders. Another chime flickers, almost lost in its own echo. The note lingers, translucent, then vanishes, leaving calm that thickens like twilight fog. She considers the unseen sailors who might follow these translations. A crew from Murmansk crossing ice-flecked water under cobalt dawn. Norwegian fishermen lifting nets heavy with cod rather than evacuation orders. Researchers in Nuuk charting plankton blooms instead of fallout clouds. They will never know the bell-like hush of this room, nor the hush inside her when the right word lands. She turns back to the chart, adds a faint dotted line denoting seasonal uncertainty. A reminder that even oceans keep changing their minds. Her pencil squeaks softly, a small mammal sound swallowed by linen. I pause here, letting the room's stillness seep into yours. Feel shoulders settle, let the map of your own muscles smooth. She rises, stretches arms slow as kelpin tide. Overhead, the lamps buzz, a soprano note laid atop the base of steam pipes. She sips Tigan tepid, yet grateful for the ghost of warmth. The bell returns, a hush wrapped in bronze, barely more than memory now. Its fading tail suggests sleep to the lattice of nerves, suggesting drifting rather than steering. She reviews the corrected paragraph one last time, initials it, slides the page into an envelope of translucent vellum, light enough to sail on breath. She seals it with wax the color of dusk, presses the bureau stamp, a compass rose inside a circle, confirming safe passage. On a bulletin board above the drafting table hangs a small photo, her as a child beside the Baltic, holding a paper boat painted with wild watercolors. She remembers launching that boat, watching wind steer it away, trusting the waves not to overturn hope. Tonight feels the same. Another chime, whisper thin like a single snowflake catching tin. Echo dissolves almost before it begins. She dims the lamps, each click a footstep toward dark. Charts fade to pale silhouettes, coastlines retreat to secrecy. She slips on her coat, pocketing a stub of pencil as souvenir of fragile decisions. Outside, the corridor yawns, quiet as an unmapped gulf. Her boots tap steady syllables on parquet, translating intention into motion. An elevator sighs open, cables hum a lullaby for iron and thought. Street level greets her with wind smelling of coal smoke and distant river ice. Beneath sodium lights, snowflakes swirl like tiny coordinate points awaiting connection. She buttons her collar, begins the walk home, footprints stitching new outlines across the blank page of sidewalk. I breathe with her steps and invite your breath to echo. If worries persist, imagine them as errant compass needles. Guide them gently toward calm magnetic north. Let night draw soft meridians over closed eyes. The bell's voice has finished, yet its silence rings on, cartography for rest. Follow its unmarked path into sleep, where oceans lie flat as paper and every sentence, like every wave, folds back into stillness before dawn. A bell sounds once, low and round, then recedes like the tide behind closed eyelids. Its echo leaves a cool hush suspended in the air, space enough for drifting. I picture her much later in life, perhaps the mid-1980s, seated at a kitchen table that wobbles on an uneven tile. Outside, dawn presses a faint lavender against the window. Inside, the kettle simmers in slow anticipation. Steam halos around her gray hair, lit by a single bulb hanging from a frayed cord. Her eyes linger on a sheet of pale stationery, an unsent letter meant for no particular address. Another chime glides in, gentler, almost fragile, like porcelain struck by a padded mallet. Between note and echo, breath unnaughts. The room feels larger. The letter begins, "Dear friend," though she has not decided whom she addresses. She writes because weather has turned colder, because memories rustle like dry leaves, because silence sometimes asks to be named. Her handwriting still curls neatly, each loop a measured generosity. She pauses, sips tea now lukewarm, and looks toward the small balcony door. Beyond the glass a pigeon balances on a wire, feathers fluffed against frost. The city, half asleep, is punctuated by distant engines coughing to life, a reminder that history keeps moving even on days when she does not leave the flat. The bell returns, thinner, draped in wool. Its resonance settles on the tabletop, smoothing the grain of wood beneath her fingertips. She writes about translation, how it once felt like tuning forks aligned across continents. She recalls the night of the correction, though she does not describe it outright, only the sensation of a pencil hovering, the weight of deciding. I learned, she writes, that verbs can cradle or shatter worlds, depending on how gently they are placed. The sentence glows faintly in morning light, ink turning from sapphire to coal. A quiet memory surfaces. A colleague she hardly spoke to, someone who favored lilac perfume and typed with astonishing speed. She wonders if that woman ever suspected why certain directives never escalated. Probably not. Most things slip under the radar of gratitude. Another bell, softer, almost imagined, trembles through the stillness. Silence grows plush, folds into corners, invites eyelids to lower. She thinks about the grandchildren she never had and the many lives that filled the world instead. Farmers who tilled soil untouched by fallout, painters who chose color over camouflage, lovers who quarreled only about small, survivable things. Each life feels like a candle set afloat on a river at dusk, flickering yet unwavering. The letter drifts again. Sometimes I hear bells that no one else hears. She smiles at her own confession, yet it feels true. The bell has been with her since that night, marking hours with invisible comfort. She writes that the bell's tone has aged along with her. Dull brass in youth, polished silver in middle seasons, now velvety bronze that barely strikes before fading. Outside, a truck backs into the courtyard, crunching through thin ice. She waits for the noise to fade, then continues, "I have learned to measure time by pauses rather than moments. The truest victories arrive without announcement." The bell murmurs again, so faint it could be the clink of spoon to cup. Sound loosens into a silk thread, guidance for wandering thoughts. She places her pen down, hands resting atop one another, fingers chilled. On the sill, a small cactus leans toward a weak shaft of winter light. She tends it sparingly, believing resilience prefers modesty. She wonders if the people spared by her correction also prefer small, steady joys to pronounced triumphs. Another chime hovers, nearly weightless. Its echo slips beneath the heartbeat, a lullaby for marrow. She resumes the letter. The world keeps secrets better than we do. It forgets disasters we never had, remembers only the weather. She pauses, unsure if the line feels too heavy for Dawn. Decides it is fine. Dawn can carry more than we give it credit for. Cold War anxiety once thrummed through every train carriage, every newspaper queue, every muted conversation in canteens. Now, decades later, the hum has softened into background hiss, like radio static searching for a station no longer broadcasting. Still, occasionally she feels it stir, the way embers glow when wind passes. The bell rings again, slower, its metallic edge dulled by distance. Breath unspools, shoulders sink another inch. She thinks of mailing the letter, but there is no address that fits the unsaid. Instead, she considers folding it into a slim envelope, tucking it between pages of a dictionary she once used daily. Words living beside words, safe in their quiet architecture. She signs only initials. Graphite lingers on her thumb, a small echo of earlier years. Before sealing the stationery, she traces a tiny circle at the bottom margin, her symbol for correction complete. The kettle clicks off. She pours fresh water over tea leaves, inhales bergamot and steam, feels warmth gather in wrists and elbows. Outside, the pigeon launches into pale sky, wings shrugging free of early chill. One final bell, hush-bound, rises and dissolves within a single breath. The day has begun, yet remains gentle. She carries the letter to the bookshelf, slides it into the dictionary between possibility and potential. Pages close lightly as though relieved. I linger in the quiet she leaves behind and invite you to linger too. If thoughts flutter, imagine them as unsent letters placed carefully among calm pages. Let each breath fold, let each exhale seal. Silence is now a soft room with open windows, bell echo tucked into plaster. Stay there. When sleep approaches, meet it the way she meets dawn, without urgency, with a pen set down, with invisible bells guiding the heart toward rest.